How many summers do you think you have left? Seriously, take a guess. Not years, not decades, summers, because the answer is probably much smaller than you think. If you're 20 years old and live to 80, you have around 60 summers left. If you're 40, around 40. If you're 60, around 20. Suddenly time doesn't feel quite so endless. And that's the strange thing about life. The numbers we use to measure it hide how limited it really is. When someone says you have 50 years left, your brain hears, basically forever. But when someone says, you have around 50 Christmases left, that feels very different. And the reason it feels different reveals something fascinating about how the human mind experiences time. Because today, we're going to do something a little uncomfortable. We're going to convert your remaining life into units your brain can actually understand. And by the end of this video, you might never think about time the same way again. Most people have no idea how much time they have left. Not because they don't know their age, because they measure life incorrectly. Let's say you're 30 years old. The average life expectancy in many developed countries is somewhere around 80 years. That means you might have roughly 50 years remaining. Sounds like a lot. 50 years. Your brain sees a giant number and assumes there's plenty of time. Plenty of time to travel. Plenty of time to learn things. Plenty of time to call people back. Plenty of time to start that project. Plenty of time to do all the things you've been putting off. But there's a problem. Humans are terrible at understanding large timescales. Our brains evolved to think about days, weeks, seasons, not decades. So let's shrink the numbers. 50 years becomes 50 summers, 50 Christmases, 50 birthdays, 50 New Year's Eves. Suddenly, the number isn't so huge anymore. You can almost count it. You can imagine it. And that's when time starts feeling real. Imagine someone handed you a jar containing 50 marbles. Each marble represents one remaining summer. Every year, one marble disappears forever. You'd probably treat those marbles differently. You'd notice them. You'd value them. You might even be careful how you spend them. But because life arrives one day at a time, we rarely see the jar. We only see today. And today always feels replaceable. Tomorrow feels guaranteed. Next year feels guaranteed. Some future version of ourselves will handle it. Except eventually, those future years become present years. And then they're gone. Psychologists have studied something called temporal discounting. It's a simple idea. Humans naturally place less value on future events than present ones. That's why saving money is difficult. That's why exercising is difficult. That's why people procrastinate. Your brain treats future rewards as less important than immediate ones. The future version of you feels almost like a different person. And because of that, we constantly act as though we have more time than we really do. But the most powerful example isn't summers or birthdays. It's people. Imagine you're 30 years old. Your parents are 60. Maybe you don't live nearby anymore. Maybe you see them twice a year. Once during summer, once during the holidays. Sounds normal. But let's do the math. If they live another 25 years, that's not 25 years together. That's about 50 visits. 50. Not thousands. Not hundreds. 50. You could literally count them on a sheet of paper. Visit number 1. Visit number 2. Visit number 3. And one day there would be no more numbers left. This realization has become famous online because of how strongly it affects people. Not because it's pessimistic. Because it's concrete. 25 years feels huge. 50 visits feels small. The relationship hasn't changed. The math hasn't changed. Only the unit changed. And suddenly, the value becomes visible. This happens everywhere in life. Think about holidays. A child experiences summer vacation differently than an adult. When you're 10 years old, a summer feels endless. 3 months feels like a lifetime. As an adult, entire years seem to vanish. People constantly say things like, "Wasn't that just last year? Where did the time go? I can't believe it's already Christmas again." And there are scientific reasons for that. One theory involves proportional time. When you're 10 years old, 1 year represents 10% of your entire life. That's enormous. When you're 50 years old, 1 year represents only 2%. The year itself hasn't changed. Your relationship to it has. Imagine looking at 1 inch on a ruler. On a tiny ruler, that inch feels significant. On a giant ruler, it feels tiny. The measurement is identical. Your perspective isn't. But there's another reason time appears to speed up. And it might be even more important. Novelty. Your brain doesn't measure time like a clock. It measures time using memories. When experiences are new, unusual, emotional, or surprising, your brain pays attention. It records more information, more memories, more landmarks. A year filled with first experiences creates a dense timeline of memories. A year filled with routine creates far fewer. Looking backward, the memory-rich year feels longer. The routine year feels compressed, almost erased. That's why a 2-week holiday can feel longer in memory than 2 ordinary months. It's not because more time passed. It's because more life happened. And this leads to a strange conclusion. The amount of time you have matters, but the density of your experiences matters too. 2 people can live through the exact same number of days. One remembers hundreds of meaningful moments. The other remembers only a blur. Same calendar, different life. Which means the terrifying math of your remaining life isn't really about counting down. It's about understanding value. Scarcity creates value. Nobody panics about air because there's plenty of it. People value diamonds because they're rare. And time is the rarest thing you'll ever own. You can earn more money, learn more skills, buy more possessions, but you cannot create another afternoon. Once a day is gone, it is permanently gone. Yet strangely, that isn't depressing. It's actually the opposite. Because meaning comes from limitation. Imagine a video game with infinite lives, infinite levels, and no ending. Nothing would matter. The reason choices matter is because alternatives disappear. The reason moments matter is because they end. The reason people matter is because they won't always be here. Scarcity gives life weight. And perhaps that's the real lesson hidden inside all this math. The goal isn't to become obsessed with counting down. The goal isn't to spend every day worrying about the future. The goal is simply to see clearly, to recognize that time isn't infinite, to understand that the people around you won't always be around, to realize that there are only so many summers, only so many birthdays, only so many conversations, only so many opportunities, and that awareness changes how you spend them. Because when you stop assuming you'll have endless chances later, you start paying attention now. You call people. You take the trip. You learn the skill. You have the conversation. You create the memory. Not because you're running out of time, but because you finally understand what time is worth. So here's a question. Imagine someone handed you a list. A complete list. Every remaining weekend you'll ever experience. Every single one. Numbered from today until the end of your life. How differently would you spend the next one?